Luck mechanics are a touchy subject in gaming. Sure, there's a big, very loud branch of luck mechanics most visible with gacha systems, blind boxes, and grinding for loot for 100 hours. But that's not the only branch. Luck in games isn't limited to Skinner boxes and losing all your money. Luck in games can open up entirely new playstyles, and provide a mechanism to sprinkle in just enough randomness to keep a game from getting stale too quickly. You can use luck mechanics in an amazing variety of ways to fine-tune the vibe of a game. Be careful though, playing with luck means playing with psychology, and there will be pitfalls to watch out for. Let's make our own luck, and see how they put the fun into fortune. It's time to craft your future in games with today's sponsor, GDC Showcase. I'm sure you've heard of GDC, the world's largest professional event for game developers. Whether you're alumni or thinking about going for the first time, get a taste of the experience at GDC's virtual career event, happening September 19th and 20th. You can join this one from your living room. Showcase is for game devs of all experience levels, from students and hobbyists to seasoned veterans, all to help you build a career in games. Attend talks by developers from several major studios, and network with your peers through Swapcard and a custom virtual platform in Gather. The games industry is moving at a rapid pace, so keep up to date at the GDC Showcase. Get $5 off sign up with my link in the description, and sign up quick because, like I said, this event is happening September 19th and 20th, so there's no time to waste. Click the link in the description. Thanks, GDC. Most games benefit from a dash of randomness. Maybe not like chess, but most games can benefit from luck playing at least a little role in how the game plays out. We'll get to some of the more nuanced examples later, but a lot of games operate with pretty basic luck mechanics. Not much more than a random number generator going off in the background. An attack might hit or miss with a random roll of the dice. How much damage you do, like if you did a critical hit or not, can be rooted in luck. A game might randomize whether or not you gain an item when you defeat this boss, or what type of item you get. Random chance might set up story events that happen or don't. Characters that appear or are absent. Where items appear. What items even do might be randomized. These common random chance elements aren't that complicated, but they add a little burst of unpredictability. But if you keep adding unpredictable effects, some can stack on top of each other. They might start to amplify player behaviors, and before you know it, you might be surprised by what new gameplay can emerge. Bloodstained Ritual of the Night is the Igarashi-directed spiritual successor to his own Symphony of the Night era Castlevania games. I mean, just look at it. Hell, just look at the title. It's Symphony of the Night. Again. Well, mostly. As a Metroidvania that leans into the Vania side of the genre, the game's progression is tied to two things: searching for key upgrades to better traverse the world, and RPG-style character-based progression. For the latter, that means there's XP and stats and whatnot, but the game's real character progression is tied to shards, random drops that enemies give up on defeat. Shards unlock new attacks and passive bonuses, so you're going to want as many of them as you can find. But shards in this game are a little more complicated than just XP or equipment by another name. Enemies may or may not drop their shard, depending on your luck. The luckier you are, the more often you'll get one, and the more duplicates you get, the more they level themselves up to a better grade. Higher grades means amplified power, through new abilities and better stats. You can also further upgrade your shards with material drops that you can also get from monsters. And that's the core of the game's character progression. Since it's all built off of how lucky you are with item drops, the best way to build is to focus on building up your luck stat as fast as you can. There are over 120 enemies with all sorts of unique shards with their own attacks and passive bonuses. And the game is about mixing and matching these abilities to build exactly the kind of character you want. The luckier you are, the faster you can grind, and the more options you'll have sooner. Some of the equipment you can get is also based on the craft materials you get from random drops, and does factor into your character progression, but it's not nearly as flashy as getting some completely broken special attacks because you had a zillion shards. The system is not all that far off from the one in Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow on paper, but in those games, the luck stat either doesn't work as intended, or its actual impact on drop rates is minuscule, so you don't get nearly the same pull to focus on luck in those games. The grind is much longer on average compared to Bloodstained. If you're into that, maybe that's fine, but I'm not. I like the game changing faster thanks to a faster progression curve. A small difference in how luck operates can make two very similar games have players behave completely differently. Luck is unpredictable, but that doesn't have to be a negative. You can choose to work with the unpredictability to a game's benefit. For some games, you can use it to force players to get outside of their comfort zone. It happens all the time in action games with a lot of combat options. One weapon or one technique might be a little more effective than the rest, or easier to perform, or there's some other reason that a player might choose to stick with a single playstyle. Players who do that might be leaving a lot of good content undiscovered, and luck mechanics can help players break out of a rut. Hades leaves it up to random chance what boons you get on each run. It's a pretty common pattern in roguelikes. You might start off with something really powerful when you fight at a distance, or something that's great for crowd control. Every new run might have a completely different killer element to add to your attack arsenal early, and if you're used to playing one way, you might be forced to switch up your tactics to take advantage of your good fortune. If you weren't using casts very often, an electric shot with chain lightning might nudge you towards using it more. Maybe you happen to keep getting modifiers for your gauntlet's special uppercut, ramping up the damage and even healing you a bit, so you turn it into your main game plan. One of these branches a player never thought to try might even become their new favorite. Hades is a game where you work with what you got. Maybe you won't always get a viable build, but the way the game progresses its story and how you can improve your character run to run make it so even a bizarre run isn't a lost run. If nothing else, you at least learn something new. Using randomness to encourage players to see distant corners of a game can make the whole experience feel fresher for longer. The right luck mechanics in the right context can even reflavor a well-worn archetype, like with tanks in RPGs. The default tank archetype can get a little dull to watch. Absorbing hits isn't all that exciting. If you're doing well, the numbers go down at a slightly slower rate. Now, what if you could dodge the hit entirely? Unicorn Overlord doesn't have a stat called luck exactly, but luck works its way into crit rates, dodge chances, and hit accuracy like lots of other RPGs, and the game lets you really take control of those last two. A number of equipable items like scarves, some weapons, and the lucky coin can give you big evasion boosts. For many characters, it's not all that noticeable. For thieves, it's super useful. Thieves in Unicorn Overlord can work like a dodge tank archetype, where you mitigate your party's damage by drawing attacks toward a character who is very good at getting out of the way. Dodging the damage makes it as if your opponent's attacks never even happened. Super useful in any game where a wasted turn is a major combat disadvantage. Dodge tanks are incredibly powerful. Well, until you get hard countered at least. Unicorn Overlord has about 10 zillion classes, and a few of them specialize in breaking through your dodge tank with guaranteed hit attacks. A few items too can dramatically increase your odds of hitting. The ability to manipulate luck mechanics results in an entirely different viable archetype, with unique aesthetics to draw from compared to the usual set of armor-clad tanks. The game is a big tangle of rock paper scissors mechanics, archetypes and counter-archetypes. The dodge tank just adds one more yarn to the weave. There's plenty of different ways that a random number generator can influence the direction of a game. But using randomness isn't without risk. Blindly sticking random elements in your mechanics can backfire. Anyone dealing with luck mechanics will have to grapple with not just the raw numbers of probability, but also how a player perceives their chances. The psychology of luck. The average person's expectations of probability can be very different from reality. That difference can lead to strange player behavior and some angry comments. The number you see for hit rates in most Fire Emblem games is not the actual chance that you'll hit your target. It used to be though. Before the first GBA Fire Emblem, the first 5 games in the series gave you the real hit percentage on attacks. If the game said you'd hit at 78%, you really did miss 22% of the time. People have a weird understanding of probability though. Turns out that most people interpret very high chances as practically guaranteed to hit, and will get really mad at the developers when the game actually does miss as often as probability dictates. To stop the complaints, the series now uses a thing called the true hit system. Two numbers are generated, then averaged together, then compared to the hit percent. In effect, players are a lot luckier than they should be. It's much harder to actually miss a 90% hit chance now, since both numbers now have to be at least close to missing for an attack to miss. The math also makes it harder to connect on attacks with very long odds, but people aren't usually trying to land a lot of 4% long shot attacks anyway, so that doesn't have nearly the same visceral impact. Fire Emblem Fates and Beyond have a slightly more complicated version of the system, but it mostly just mutes the effect a little. Of course, you can go too far with handing out lucky bonuses. Fire Emblem was discreet about tampering with the odds. Crisis Core is a broken slot machine. Crisis Core, the Final Fantasy VII spin-off game, is a decent action RPG from before the other, later, way bigger FF7 action RPG. You play as normal man Zack, trapped in a world of a bunch of weird theater kids. Battles involve a slot reels mechanic, DMW, the Digital Mindwave System. The DMW consists of images of major characters in the game, representing Zack's emotions and memories. Really, it's here to get you all kinds of bonuses, if you're lucky enough. But you don't have to be that lucky. You'll get bonuses at a pretty constant rate. Maybe that would be fine for little bonuses, but these aren't little bonuses. Low on MP or AP? Don't worry, you can win a 0 MP or 0 AP cost bonus that lasts for like 15 seconds. Often you'll get both at once. Low on health? Don't worry, you're invincible to physical attacks now, or immune to knockdown, or maybe straight up completely invincible. There aren't any debuffs to avoid, and you don't even have to time the reel or anything. You just get the bonuses. They just happen mid-combat. The devs said in interviews that they borrowed from pachinko design, and built luck into the system to keep battles from becoming repetitive. But the system undercuts a ton of fights. You're flooded with lucky events, and the more they appear, the more they lose their luster. The system winds up sucking the tension out of a fight, as you're one dice roll away from a bonus that completely removes any stakes or the need to strategize. Very quickly, these amazing bonuses lose their impact because of how often they trigger. It may feel generous for a game to give out bonuses to players, but without a little restraint, good fortune can quickly lose its fun factor. Some mechanics let players control how lucky they're going to be, and can result in some very subtle but deep gameplay. Deck builders live and die by these mechanics. Adding and removing cards to a deck changes your odds, not from an explicit mechanic coded in, like a 5% bonus when you equip an item, but implicitly through the way the natural card probabilities shift. Building a deck stacked in your favor can give the same satisfaction as solving a tough puzzle. Every deck building game does it, but Balatro is an especially pure and understandable case. Your starting deck in Balatro is just a normal deck of playing cards, but you can't get very far if you just let the cards play themselves and hope you draw enough flushes and full houses to survive. You're going to have to stack the deck in your favor, but it'll have to be done card by card. Slowly, you gain the power to add or remove a card from your deck, or change one into another. Maybe you get a joker that gives you more points for hearts, or for playing kings a lot, so you start changing the suits and ranks of cards that don't fit into that game plan. Maybe you don't need this too, so you change it into another copy of something you want. Hand by hand, you whittle down what you don't want, and your deck transforms into some abomination of glass polychrome face cards, variable suits, a bunch of steel, and like 12 aces. You've taken a block of raw marble and chiseled it down into a points engine, where you might not have to rely on the luck of the draw anymore at all. Every card you can draw has its purpose, and nothing in this machine is out of place. The better the machine, the deeper you will be able to get, and the greater performance the game will demand of you. The ability to manipulate your fortune in Balatro is the game. Without that, it's just video poker. Tying luck to a pure random number generator, like a dice roll, is easy to do, but maybe not the most fun way to add randomness. How can you spice up a dice roll? Well, maybe let the player influence it a little. I can't think of a series more tied to random luck than Mario Party. The first game introduced a dice block for determining how many spaces you'd move, but it was just a random number generator. There's no drama in it. You roll and you get what you get. Maybe you'd get a weird dice block to pop up in addition, but that was random too. After the first game, the series would add new dice blocks and more mechanics, Instead of just letting fate take over, you could use an item that replaced your dice with different odds. Each game had a wide variety of items, but let's just look at Mario Party Superstars as an example. You could get double or triple dice to bump up how many you roll at once, a mushroom that added 5 spaces to your roll, cursed dice that limits a target to a max roll of 3 spaces, or even a custom block that would let you choose your roll. You had plenty of other options to manipulate the game, like the golden pipe that brings you to the star, warp blocks that swap places with a random player, or a chomp call that just moved the star itself. With just these items, the game now lets players choose to nudge their fate at just the right moment. Giving players some option, any option, even not that many options, can completely change the feeling of a game from being out of your control to something you have agency over. Every roll is a decision when you have these items at your disposal. Even choosing to not use an item and save it for later can have big impacts. The dice roll still is random within a range, so players are still risking something when they use an item, but it feels far less like the outcome is out of their hands. Maybe the biggest downside of luck mechanics is that they need to include a risk of failure. Without the risk, there's no tension and no fun. But it's tough to not alienate people when you break the bad news. Telling a player they didn't get what they wanted can be very frustrating, especially if a game has to do it over and over again. But if you can't eliminate failure, can you instead make it a lot less painful? Harry Dubois is a complete mess in Disco Elysium. You can make him almost any character trait you want, but there's going to be a lot of negatives mixed in there. You don't have to be a drunk or an addict, but you might be. You don't have to be a pushover or a psychopath, but you'll probably be one of those. Getting through the day alive is a major accomplishment, let alone solving the murder case you're ostensibly there to do. Thank God for Kim. The way you interact with the world in Disco Elysium is through dice rolls. As you talk with NPCs, all kinds of situations play out, and your particular version of Harry will have to improvise on the fly, however he can. Elements of your personality, your strengths and weaknesses, they gain the spotlight at different times, depending on the situation. You might have to get a read on someone to see if they're lying, consult whether or not you know about a place or a person, gauge a situation to see if you're walking into something dangerous, or just fight your ego while trying to start a car. Tasks often involve random rolls of the dice to see whether you happen to have the right stuff to accomplish what you set out to do. But of course, success can't exist without failure, and you'll be failing a lot. If you fail a dice roll in Disco Elysium, you won't succeed, but the how of why you don't succeed is where the game's extreme amounts of world building and storytelling come into play. Roll with it. Your psyche might start fighting with itself. Harry's insecurities, pride, and his unstable nature are all fleshed out through these tiny, everyday defeats. The game wouldn't be nearly as interesting if failure meant failure and nothing more. A bad dice roll in this game still gets you a prize. It's just not what you were expecting. The writing is the star, and any unlucky streak can get you into some unbelievable situations. That's what you came for, right? You're not really here to solve a crime. You're here to be entertained. If it has to be at Harry's expense, so be it. The game is full of random dice rolls that are certain to not go your way, but in Disco Elysium, failure is just success by other means. With any luck, you'll join us in the comments section. I'm looking for you all to fill me in on luck mechanics that affected very weird parts of a game. Final Fantasy VIII's luck stat impacted crit rate, but not for Squall or Cypher. Evasion from hits, but not the chance to run from a battle. And not the chance of successful mugging, because that was the speed stat instead. Your comments have to be at least that weird. We've got more content over on our Patreon, where for $1 a month you can get early previews of new episodes, our whole back catalog of podcasts, and our monthly newsletter. Check that out. Luck mechanics in games don't have to be elements out of a player's hands. By mixing a touch of control with the inherent randomness of luck, you can nudge player behavior to do things you might not be able to do otherwise. Luck is a flexible tool. How you choose to include it is up to you.